You are live.
Thank you. Good noon. This is the meeting of the Joint Fiscal Committee on February 11th. We have two items on our agenda. One is a discussion of the $200 million grant that the state of Vermont is in the process of receiving. And then the second one is another grant from that is a second grant. I'm sorry. It's already been a long day. So let us continue this discussion of the $200 million grant. Commissioner Hanford is here. I believe he perhaps has some additional information or comments for us, and our job this afternoon is to decide how we would like to see this grant dispersed. So yeah, there you are, Commissioner Hanford. You were getting some additional info for us. And you are muted. There we go.
All right. Good afternoon. Hello again. Some additional information has been provided. Some additional discussions have been had. One of the pieces that folks may have seen or may not yet is that the utility assistance numbers from Public Service Department have changed a little bit. They have gone down to 12.7 million as an estimated need, and that has been communicated and should be reduced, in our opinion, and put back into the reserve that can be held back for future allocation. They went and looked at the utility arrearage now to date, and also took into account the increased LIHEAP money that's available right now, knowing that some folks that would have utility arrearage, including fuel pay, have been helped or will continue to be helped at a higher level with those funds. So that's one of the main reasons they've reduced their request. I still think it is important to release what they've asked, as well as the full rental assistance ask. I know there have been some discussions about wanting some parameters placed on the rental assistance and utility rental arrearage and forward assistance to really ensure that properties that we're assisting with rental payments are safe. So some code meeting Vermont safety code, as well as insurance that the rents won't be raised as a result of this program. So I believe folks have talked about that within the committee, or some folks, and that may be reflected in the new language you have.
Thank you. Senator Kitchell?
Yes, we've had some discussions, and there was a desire to look at the policies that were put in place for the rental assistance program that we funded through CRF. There are some differences. Obviously, there was no income test for that program, and there is an income test for the funds associated with the grant that we're considering today. But it is possible to carry forward that policy that would certify that we are paying rent on rental that does not involve code violations where there's not actually housing hazards. It's a policy that the legislature enacted with the prior, and there was a request to carry that policy into this program as well. And then there was the other concern, which was that there could be the potential where landlords would, knowing that this was federal money coming in, could maybe make fairly egregious increases in rent, simply knowing that the funding would be there. So it is something that I had discussed with the commissioner, and for that reason, there would be language around that the rent would be for the period. And I think you said the rents are going out in 3-month periods. Is that right, Commissioner?
Yes.
So it would allow it would prevent sort of rent gouging or egregious increases in rents on saying, well, you're not having to pay it. It's federal money. So your rent's going up $200 a month or something like that. So it would guard against that or protect against that. So those were the two policy areas that are kind of, one was just a continuation of what we already enacted as a legislature, and the other is to protect against those kinds of egregious increases in rent.
And I could just add a little bit of detail there. The past program, Rental Housing Stabilization Program, it didn't have an income limit. And so the way to get around this was by capping the rent that we could pay, which was a sound policy for that funding. For this funding, it's much more important to deal with the rent increases as opposed to coming up with an artificial rent cap, because part of the reason this money is available are folks that could be in a situation where they wouldn't normally be at 80% of area median income or even 50, but because of the pandemic, that's part of the certification, their income has been reduced. But when their income wasn't reduced, their rent was above what those voucher rents would have been. And so if we enacted the same policy as the last one, we'd be leaving folks without any ability to benefit from this money as it's intended. So I think that the best way to go forward on this is to have a process where if they receive these funds for rental assistance, they will not be able to raise the rent. They won't receive any more assistance if they in fact did that, because that's the only way we would be able to stop this, is stopping any future payments. But from our data from the last time around, 90% of all the rents automatically came in with the request below that cap. And so, I think the way to deal with it, as I said, is to require or establish a procedure to ensure the rent is not increased as a result of receiving these funds for the term of assistance. Is sort of the best way to deal with it.
And you have the ability to do this. This is not adding an extra burden or pushing the money out in an expedient fashion.
It'd be built into the application, and them accepting the funds would have to agree to this provision, and it would be certified upon every time they reapply. So, it does add a little bit of compliance, but it's not a deal breaker in our view at all.
Okay, self-certification, they just have to sign a statement. You don't have to go check and see pay stubs or something.
So, they will when they apply, they will state what the rent is, and there's an applicant can you still see me? My internet just went.
Yes, we can see
dead
you.
on me for some reason. Okay. Well, I can't see any of you, but you can hear me. The tenant is also part of this application, and we'll be able to verify the rents when folks, submit their renter rebate, and there'll be a compliance check of some level. I can't state exactly right now what that would be, but we can deal with that in the procedures and process for releasing this money.
Okay. So Representative Ansel.
Yeah, that gets me back to the question I tried to ask the other day about the interplay between this and the renter rebate program. And I didn't get an answer that gave me much information yesterday. But it sounds, I'm not sure who actually gets this money. It sounds as though if it's a co-application with the landlord and the tenant jointly, is the tenant also receiving this money? And does that affect their eligibility for renter rebate in some way?
So the way this is set up is the payment typically goes directly to the landlord. But if the tenant, I'm trying to remember here because there was a nuance here. If someone refuses, either party refuses to participate, there's a way to still get the other party the funds, if that makes sense. So say a tenant refuses to apply and participate, but the landlord is not getting any rent. They can apply and receive this funding. And vice versa, if a tenant can't get their landlord to participate in this program, the funds could go directly to the tenant so they can pay the rent, if that makes sense. In the renter rebate, we've already dealt with this on the past program. We've checked in with the tax department. They have a statement on their renter rebate application that refers to these funds. The funds received for rental assistance do not count as rent paid by the tenant. So it's automatically deducted from any return on that renter rebate that they would get.
Does it count as income to the tenant?
It doesn't count as income to the tenant.
No.
But it's not
So-
rent that they paid, so they can't get a reimbursement from it. It's income to the landlord.
So the rental assistance would be paid and the tenant would also then be eligible for whatever the renter, it's called a renter credit now, but a renter credit that they would be eligible for even though they didn't pay the rent.
They would be only eligible for the credit for the rent that they paid, not provided by this program.
Okay,
Yeah.
understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Cummings?
Yeah, I had a question came up in health and welfare this morning. And a question came up about trailer parks where you may own your mobile home, but you're paying rent on the land. Does that qualify?
So that's one of these, the last program it absolutely did. We were able to qualify lot rent, as well as property taxes, if it was included in your rent somehow. This program doesn't give that clarity as we speak. Certainly people that rent mobile homes in a mobile home park, their full rent would be eligible. And often the lot rent is included in that price and whatever else is covered, they would be fine. But straight out lot rent, if you own the mobile home does not appear to be eligible at this point. It's more of a home ownership situation.
Okay. Representative Kornheiser?
Thanks. In situations like that, Josh, would paying that person's lot rent be considered preventing homelessness and be eligible in the other category that's going through OEO?
The other housing services, we would, I could assure you, we would try to push every one of those flexibilities possible. There's a lot of remaining response from the Treasury on these exact questions. We have that question, same with a property tax, situation out there for further guidance on, but I can't answer that right now.
Okay, thank you. So we've been discussing the first portion of the proposal, which is that $110 million would be distributed to the Agency of Administration to grant out to the Vermont State Housing Authority with the kind of conditions or within the framework that we've just been discussing. I don't see any further questions on this. The next portion of the proposal in front of us is the grant, the $12.7 million grant to the Public Service Department. And we heard in the discussion that was a variation from what was originally proposed based on their analysis of what the need is. Are there any questions associated with that? I'm not seeing any. Senator Kitchell?
Well, originally we had some first concern as to the adequacy, but you've done quite a bit of trying to understand the interplay between multiple benefit programs. So the concern was whether the 18 was adequate, but in light of the fact of how the motion I think we're going to offer would keep a significant amount of funding available to address. All of these are estimates, and that if in fact the take up is higher than we think, you're currently estimating at the 12.7, then we've got the capacity to address the need for more funding as we gain experience here. So I guess I would have to say that probably what you're proposing now is more refined than the 18 and does try to accommodate or consider the impact of that new utility in the form of fuel.
Correct.
Thank
Okay.
you. And then moving along, there is the next portion of this proposal is that 15 million would be granted to AHS to assist with homelessness and services around preventing homelessness. I don't think there's any change to that from what we had previously heard. And then finally, there is a proposal that $9 million for, quote, other housing services be retained. Is this the one that we're going? No, that's going to the Department of Housing and Community Development for the services that you will be providing around mediation and counseling, et cetera, or granting out. I don't think there's any change to that. And then finally, there is a proposal that we would hold back 53.3 million with the Agency of Administration as a reserve to allocate out as we understood additional needs, as there maybe is additional flexibility, and any expenditures from that 53.3 million would be based on an appropriation of the of the legislature. So we would go through our normal appropriation process, period. And then the other portion of the proposal is that any reallocations that would happen among the funds that we have been discussing. So the 110 million, the 12.7, the 15, and the 9 million. So everything but for the 53.3 would, if there were reallocations, as it became clear that a need to move money from one spot to another, that would be allowed through the joint fiscal process. So I think that is the proposal that is currently on the table before us. And I would see if there's any further discussion or if somebody would like to make a proposal.
Should we put it on the screen, the proposal?
Pardon me?
Sure, I would like to, and we can put it on the screen, but I would like to move approval of the grant. And then that approval of the grant would also include the allocated funds consistent with what we've just talked about, the 110 million for Housing Authority, 12.7, the 15 million to AHS, the 9 million to DHCD for other housing services, and then making it clear the remainder would require legislative, based on a legislative appropriation, and then the other is the reallocation among the allocations above if they need to be adjusted, which is very similar to what we did with CRF. So I would move approval of the grant with the additional language.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, discussion. Thank you, Senator Westman. Discussion? I'm not seeing any. Representative Fagan, are you prepared to call a roll?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair.
It looks like we're ready for that, so please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Ansel,
Yes.
Representative Brigman,
Yes.
Representative Fagan is yes. Senator Kitchell,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes.
Senator Balin,
Yes.
Senator Cummings,
Yes.
Representative Kornheiser,
Yes.
Senator Westman,
Yes.
Representative Hooper.
Yes.
We are 10-0.
Okay, thank you, members. That's terrific. The next item on
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We appreciate the hard work that you've done and you're about ready to engage in.
And now the work begins. Thank
Yeah,
you.
exactly. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is, I have lost my agenda, but it is another grant that is before us. And I see that Mr. Daly has joined us, and perhaps he could briefly, perfect timing, Mr. Daly. Thank you. Could you briefly describe this grant for us?
Thank you, Representative Hooper. This is Joint Fiscal Office number 3035 that is on your agenda. It's a grant from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to the Department of Health. It's from the CDC's Office of Alzheimer's Disease and Healthy Aging Program. It's a $200,000 grant with an expected 3-year project period. So 3 years times $200,000. You'll note in the AA1 that we're because of the partial year startup, our AA1 does not reflect the full $600,000 that's expected because it only covers the first 2.5 years of the period. This is a pretty straightforward public health program. The CDC's office is looking to provide grants to states to implement something called a Healthy Brain Initiative Roadmap, and it's to develop public health approach to Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, emphasizing use of available evidence. It's to educate the public and healthcare professionals about primary prevention through risk reduction, to encourage screening and early diagnosis, and to reduce preventable hospitalizations for persons with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. The grant will fund 2 positions in the health department: a public health analyst who will focus on collecting and analyzing the available data, and a program manager. The work will be done as part of under the direction of our chronic disease program director, and is consistent with other projects that same team is working on. Be happy to answer any questions from the members of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Committee, are there any questions? Just to get it clear in my brain, this is not a grant that you applied for in response to the pandemic, but it is a grant that is just part of your normal processes. Question.
That's correct. That's correct, Representative Hooper. I don't get to spend much time these days on the traditional public health.
Mm-hmm. But this is an opportunity to do that. Great, thank you. Committee members, any questions? And if not, would somebody care to make a motion?
Sure. I'll move acceptance of this grant. And the reason, because we're meeting, this is the forum that I believe we should use to approve the grant. And so I move approval of the grant to the Department of Health.
Okay.
I'll
thank
second.
you. Representative Ansel seconds it. Representative Fagan, you were trying to raise your hand a moment ago. Question or comment?
Question, just one of those pop-ups came up, and you have to wait. So Paul, thanks for coming in. I noted that the number of positions here are number 2, but when I'm reading some of the language that comes with it, it almost sounds like there are 3 positions. Can you just confirm the number of positions that this will fund, please?
Representative Fagan, it will fund 2. There'll be 2 positions that will be authorized through this grant, through your acceptance of this grant. And there is a salary for a portion of our chronic disease program director, 10% of her salary. So those are the 3 people who will receive a portion of their salary from this grant.
Gotcha. So the 2 positions that will be authorized here will be 100% funded. And then current Vermont worker will receive 10% of salary from this grant.
Well, to be very specific, Representative Fagan, the analysts will be funded 50% from this grant, and 50% of the analyst time will be funded from 2 other federal grants. And the program manager will be 80% time funded from this grant, and the balance will be funded through the Tobacco Control Program.
Let's not get any deeper into these weeds. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I don't see anybody else wanting to wade into the weeds. And are we ready for a vote? I'm not seeing any additional questions. So Representative Fagan, will you call the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Ansel,
Yes.
Representative Brigman,
Yes.
Representative Fagan is yes. Senator Kitchell,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes.
Senator Balin,
Yes.
Senator Cummings,
Yes.
Representative Kornheiser,
Yes.
Senator Westman,
You were muted, Senator Westman.
Yes.
Thank you.
and Representative Hooper.
Yes.
We are 10-0.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bailey. Very much appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Committee, do you have any further business for us? If there is none, a motion to adjourn would be. in
I'll move,
order.
we adjourn.
Thank you. A second, I assume. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, great. Thank you. Let's go off.